Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Imam al-Mursaleen Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Mabad brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Authentic Tawheed 19, please take notes. Welcome back to this another of our sittings, and today we shall be covering the life of the second caliph, Umar ibn al Khattab. Umar ibn al Khattab was born 579 CE. Umar ibn al Khattab. Umar ibn al Khattab. Okay, spell it the way I spell it. Umar ibn al-Khattab. He was born 579 CE. Therefore, he was 8 years younger than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because the Prophet was born 571 CE. So Umar, look how I spell Umar. Spell Umar the way I spell it. From the Quraysh tribe. Quraysh. He was Quraysh. And spell it the way I spell it. The second most senior companion of the Prophet after Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He was the second most senior companion of Muhammad after Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And he was the second of the 4 rightly gathered caliphs. He was the second of the 4 rightly gathered caliphs. Second most senior companion after Abu Bakr. He was the second of the rightly gathered caliphs. He was famous for his piety. He was famous for his piety, his bravery, his wisdom, and his justice. He was famous for his piety, his bravery, his wisdom, and his justice. Because of his he was famous for his piety, bravery, wisdom, and justice. Okay. Because of his keen sense of justice, they gave him the nickname Al-Faruq, Umar Al-Faruq. Because of his keen sense of justice, he was given the nickname Umar Al-Faruq. Faruq means the one who distinguishes between truth from falsehood. The one who is able to discern. The one who is able to distinguish between truth from falsehood. That is Faruq. Can you hear the adhan, brothers and sisters? Adhan? Was born in Mecca. Umar was born in Mecca 579 CE to a middle class family from the tribe of Quraysh. Umar was born in Mecca 579 CE to a middle class family from the tribe of Quraysh. Umar was born in Mecca 579 CE to a middle class family from the tribe of Quraysh. Okay, yes. He was able to read was rare among the Arabs at in that era. He was able to read and write, even though literacy was rare among the Arabs at that era. The Arabs used to memorize things. They didn't used to read things. They memorized things. Umar was able to read and write, even though literacy was rare among the Arabs at that era. Umar, he could read and write, even though literacy was rare among the Arabs at the time. Okay, yes. He was skillful in martial arts, horse riding, and wrestling. He was skillful in martial arts, horse riding, and wrestling. He had a love for poetry and literature. He was a gifted orator. He had a love for poetry and literature. He was also a gifted orator. He was an erudite speaker. Okay, that's a new English word for you, erudite. I hope I spelled it properly. An erudite speaker is a person who is a fluent speaker, an excellent speaker. That's a new English word added to your vocab. His intelligence, he was an erudite speaker, fluent. Due to his intelligence, he was a renowned arbitrator among the tribes in Mecca. Due to his intelligence, the intelligence of Umar, he was a famous arbitrator, the arbitrator of conflicts among the tribes of Arabia. His father before him was also an arbitrator. He inherited the position from his father. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, like his friend Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he was a merchant. And his trips took him to Rome and Persia. Like his friend Abu Bakr, he was a merchant. And his trips took him to Rome and Persia. But he wasn't a successful trader like his friend Abu Bakr. He wasn't a successful trader like his friend Abu Bakr. Umar used to drink alcohol in Jahiliyyah before he embraced Islam. Early days he was fiercely antagonistic towards Islam. And he accused the Prophet Muhammad of dividing Quraysh. In his early days, he was fiercely antagonistic towards Islam. And he accused the Prophet of dividing Quraysh. He left his house with his sword in his hand, and he said he's going to kill the Prophet Muhammad because no one has divided Quraysh the way Muhammad had divided Quraysh. On his way, he met his friend Nu'aym. And Nu'aym saw the anger in his face and he asked him, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to kill Muhammad because he has used his religion, Islam, to divide Quraysh, and no one has brought more fitna to Quraysh than Muhammad." Nu'aym said, "Why don't you sort out your own household first?" Can you find a hadith about Umar's conversion to Islam? Because maybe it's easier on the admin. It's easier and the admin authentic 19, if you just post the hadith, it's a long hadith. Authentic 33, can you post the hadith about Omar's conversion to Islam? Nu'aym said to Umar, where are you going? He said, I'm going to kill Muhammad. Nu'aym said, why don't you, because Muhammad divided Quraysh. Nu'aym said, why don't you sort out your own household? Umar said, what do you mean? He said, your own sister Fatima has converted to Islam. She and her husband, Sa'id ibn Zayd. That's the husband of Umar's sister. Your own sister Fatima embraced Islam. She and her husband Sa'id ibn Zayd. So why don't you sort out your own household before you kill Muhammad? So he went straight to the house of his sister. Her name was Fatima. And he burst into the house. And the person who was teaching them to recite the Quran, Khabbab, he went and hid himself. He hid himself in the house. And he said to his sister, I heard you have converted to Islam. What were you reading? They were reading Surah Taha. And he started to beat Sa'id ibn Zayd. And his sister, and Mike can hear me. Okay, shukran. He started to beat the husband, Sa'id ibn Zayd. The sister Fatima jumped in front to save her husband. And he hit his sister in the face and she started to bleed. And when his sister started to bleed, she shouted out, yes, we are Muslims and we will never leave Islam. Even if you kill us, we will never abandon Islam. When he saw his sister bleeding from the face, he felt ashamed of what he did. So he said, let me see what you were reading. His sister Fatima refused to give him the Quran. She said, go and wash yourself, you are unclean. And he washed. And she showed him what she was reading. It was Surah Taha. Now, which verse pierced his heart? Which verse, according to my research, which verse of Surah Taha captured the heart of Umar? It was verse 14. Okay, bring me the Hujjah, Surah 20, verse 14. I ask you to post the conversion of Umar. Who's going to post it? Because it saved the admin having to write everything I'm saying. The conversion of Umar is a famous story and it's all in the books. So it's easy for you to find. Surah 20 verse 14, bring me that ayah. That is the ayah that captured the heart of Umar. In which Allah said, Inni ana Allah la ilaha illa ana fa'budni wa aqim as-salata li dhikri. Verily, I am Allah. None has the right to worship me and perform salah for my remembrance. Perform salah for my remembrance. This is the verse that captured the heart. And just one person. You can hear what I'm saying. We are talking about Umar's conversion to Islam. I'm saying in the early days, when Umar was young, he was fiercely antagonistic. He was fiercely antagonistic towards Islam. He accused the Prophet of dividing Quraysh. So he left his house one day with his sword in his hand to kill the Prophet. Now, I would like somebody to post the conversion of Umar, the entire hadith, because it saved the admin having to write everything I'm saying. On his way, he found Nu'aym, his best friend. Some books, his best friend. Nu'aym saw Umar with anger in his face. He said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to kill this man, Muhammad, because he has divided Quraysh, and no one has divided Quraysh like he has done. Never before anyone has divided Quraysh in that manner." Nu'aym said, "Why don't you sort out your own household?" He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Your own sister, Fatima, embraced Islam." So he went straight to the house of Fatima. The person who was teaching them the Quran, Khabbab, went and hid himself in the house. Umar said, "What were you reading?" And he started to beat the husband of Fatima. Fatima was his sister. The husband of Fatima is called Sa'id ibn Zayd. She jumped in front to stop her husband being beaten, and Umar struck her in the face, and she started to bleed. He felt ashamed when he saw the blood, because his sister shouted out, "Yes, we are Muslims, and we will never recant, we will never leave Islam, do what you want." He said, "Where is the pages that you are reading?" She said, "You are unclean, go and wash." He went and washed, and he read the pages. It was Surah Taha. And the verse that struck the heart of Umar was Surah Taha, verse 14, where Allah Ta'ala said, "Inni ana Allah la ilaha illa ana fa'budni." There is no deity worthy of worship except me, Allah, so worship me and perform salah for my remembrance. When Umar read this passage from the Quran, he had a change of heart. So he asked, "Where is Muhammad? I want to meet Muhammad." Then Khabbab, who was hiding, came out of his hiding and said, "Oh Umar, you need to go and see the Prophet because he made a dua." Of the Prophet was, "Oh, any one of them that you choose." So maybe Allah has answered the dua of the Prophet. The Prophet was in the house of Arqam ibn al-Arqam. That was the first university. And he was giving a dars to his Sahabas. When they heard the banging on the door, they looked to the window and they said, "It was Umar. With peace, he will have peace, but if Umar comes with war, I'll break his neck with his own sword." And when the doors opened, the Prophet asked Umar, "How long will you remain in kufr?" And then Umar recited the Shahada. "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah." I testify that there is no God but Allah, and I testify that Muhammad is a Messenger. And Umar conversion to Islam brought success to Islam. Now, when Umar embraced Islam, the Muslims were praying in hiding. We on the haqq, the truth, and they are on batil, falsehood. The Prophet said, "Yes, isn't our religion the truth and their religion is falsehood?" The Prophet said, "Yes. So why are we praying in hiding?" And Umar said, "We have to pray in the open." It was after the conversion of Umar that the Muslims, they mustered the strength to pray in the open. "I come to you in order to believe in Allah and His Messenger, and that which is God, whose law filled with delight." Muhammad, together with his companions, cried aloud, "Allahu Akbar, Allah is great." So this was the conversion of Umar. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, when Umar embraced Islam, it brought success. It brought victory to the Muslims. When Umar converted to Islam, it brought victory to the Muslims. His migration to Medina was our success, and his reign a blessing from Allah. We didn't offer our salah publicly in Mecca, Masjid al-Haram, until Umar embraced Islam. Can I find that hadith? I learned it from my sheikhs. Listen to the hadith. Umar embracing Islam was our victory. His migration from Mecca to Medina was our success. And his reign as the Caliph was a barakah from Allah. We didn't offer salah in the Haram, Masjid al-Haram, publicly until Umar embraced Islam. I'm going to find the hadith. It's found in the Tariq of Suyuti. Where is the hadith that was quoted? The hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Umar embracing Islam was our victory. His migration to Medina was our success, and his reign as the Caliph was a barakah from Allah. Salah in Masjid al-Haram publicly until after Umar embraced Islam. However, found it, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said Umar's submission to Islam was a conquest. His migration was a victory. His imamate, his rule as Caliph, was a blessing. I have seen when we were unable to pray at the Kaaba until Umar submitted. When he embraced Islam, he fought them, the pagans, until they left us alone and we prayed. So, it's amazing how one man can change the face of Islam. One man can bring bravery to the Muslim community. And when Umar embraced Islam, they split the Muslims in two groups. One group was led by Hamza, the uncle of the Prophet, and the other group was led by Umar ibn al Khattab. One man changed the face of Islam because he was a brave person. We continue the life history of Umar. The Muslims were persecuted in Mecca, and the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded them to migrate from Mecca to Medina. Even though the kuffar of Mecca hated the Muslims, they didn't want the Muslims to migrate to Medina to enjoy the freedom of Medina, to practice their religion in safety. It's like the British, they don't like the Muslims, but they don't want you to migrate from the UK. Many of my friends were stopped in the airport. Or when they went to Yemen or Egypt, they told the Egyptian authorities to make their life hell upon arrival in Egypt, to deport them from Yemen. Many of my friends who tried to live in Yemen. So even though the kuffar hate you, they don't want you to migrate. They want to make your life hell. There's no difference between the British and Quraysh in their hatred of Islam and Muslims. So the people had to migrate at night in secret. But Umar was different. When Umar was about to migrate, he went to Quraysh and said, if any one of you would like his wife to become a widow, and he would like his children to become orphans, let him come and stop me from migrating to join Muhammad in Medina. He migrated, and no one tried to stop Umar from migrating. Now, who was his companion when he migrated? Saheeh ibn Zayd. Do you remember when Umar went into the house of his sister and started to beat Saheeh ibn Zayd? And his sister jumped in front of him and said, we are Muslims. Do what you want. And when he hit her, she started to bleed from her face. And he felt embarrassed, ashamed of what he did to his sister. So he asked, can I read what you were reciting? And it was Surah Taha, and he embraced Islam after reading Surah Taha. The same husband of her sister. He was the companion of Umar during his journey from Mecca to Medina. Now look how heart can change. The Arabic word for heart is qalb. Word for heart is qalb. Qalb means something that keeps turning over and over and over. It doesn't remain the same. When I was studying in Saudi Arabia, and I used to go and visit the Prophet's grave in the masjid, I'm always surprised about something. I find something shocking. Umar left his house with his sword in his hand to kill the Prophet. But today his grave is beside the grave of the Prophet in Medina. Why? Because heart can change. Many times, divorce. Why? Because they have a change of heart. And many times, a person can propose to a person and they said no, and after 1 year, they said, okay, I accept your proposal. Why? I have a change of heart. So the heart doesn't remain the same. And because the heart doesn't remain the same, it keeps turning over and over and over. The word qalb, from the word yuqallib, means something that keeps turning over and over. Allah taught us a dua to make. رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا وَهَبْ لَنَا مِن لَّدُنكَ رَحْمَةً إِنَّكَ أَنتَ الْوَهَّابُ. O Allah, cause not our hearts to deviate after you have gathered us. Verse 8. 3 verse 8. O Allah, cause not our hearts to deviate after you have gathered us. So why Allah taught you to make that dua? Because the heart doesn't remain the same. Many people apostate from Islam. Didn't you know that? So for you to die in Islam, that's a bonus from Allah. That's a barakah from Allah. Many people apostate from Islam. The heart doesn't remain the same. Now, I ask you to find the ayah that touched the heart of Umar. Okay, authentic COVID-19. You're going to write in your notes. The ayah that touched the heart of Umar and caused him to embrace Islam was Surah Taha, verse 14. Surah 20, verse 14. This is the verse that touched the heart of Umar and caused him to embrace Islam. When Umar arrived in Medina, the ayah that turned the heart of Umar and caused him to embrace Islam was Surah 20, verse 14. Okay, bring the ayah. Yes, verily I am Allah. None has a right to worship but me, so worship me and perform salah for my remembrance. That is the ayah that touched the heart of Umar. When Umar arrived in Medina, the Prophet paired him up with Muhammad ibn Maslama. Muhammad ibn Maslama. He was from the Ansars and Umar was from al-Muhajirun. So when the Muslims migrated, the Prophet would pair them up. A brother from Mecca will be paired up with a brother from Medina and they would live in each other's homes. Muhammad ibn Maslama, this name is a very important name in Islam. Why? Because he was the one who killed Ka'b ibn Ashraf. Ka'b ibn Ashraf was a Jew who used to compose poems to insult Islam and Muslims. Ka'b ibn Ashraf was killed by Muhammad ibn Maslama. Ka'b ibn Ashraf. That's the person he killed. When he became the Caliph, he remained very, very close to Muhammad ibn Maslama. He remained very close to him. Because he was the chief investigator, the chief inspector of accountability. That was the position of Umar gave him. When Umar was the Caliph, he kept in touch with all the provinces and all the countries that he governed. Egypt, Yemen, Syria, Palestine, Jordan, even as far as Armenia, Azerbaijan. Umar kept in touch. And he used to ask the people if the Amir is governing the people with justice. If people complain to Umar about the Amir that he is tyrannical, he used to use Muhammad ibn Maslama, the chief investigator of accountability, to see if the people are speaking the truth about their Amir, their leader, or the people were lying about their leader. And Muhammad ibn Maslama was from the tribe of al-Aus. He was the tribe of al-Aus, and his name is important in Islamic history because he killed Ka'b ibn Ashraf, the Jew who used to recite poetry to insult Islam and Muslims. Now, what was the straw that broke the camel back? Why did the Prophet send Muhammad ibn Maslama to kill Ka'b ibn Ashraf? Because he wrote a poem that touched a nerve with the Prophet. The poem he wrote was, all the Muslim girls of Medina can hear me. Ibn Maslama was the one who killed Ka'b ibn Ashraf, the Jew who composed poems to insult Muslims. The poem that caused his death, the poem that broke the camel back, the poem that hurt the Prophet, the poem that touched a nerve with the Prophet. The last poem he wrote before he was killed is, I am so handsome, all the Muslim girls in Medina has a crush on me. So when he wrote that poem, I'm so handsome, all the Muslim girls in Medina has a crush on me, that's when the Prophet decided he has to be killed. He has gone too far. He has gone too far. Enough is enough. The Prophet decided enough is enough. Now let us continue our story about Umar because I digressed. Umar ibn al Khattab participated in the Battle of Badr. Khattab participated in the Battle of Badr, which was 2 AH after the Hajj. He wrote a poem that says he is so handsome that all the Muslim girls have a crush on me, was when the Prophet decided he had to be killed. Yes, because he was insulting Muslim women. And he was rich as well. So he thought his wealth and his handsomeness makes all the Muslim girls have a crush on him. But he was killed. That was the last poem he wrote. His head was chopped off. His head was severed from his body. And Muhammad ibn Maslama brought his head back in a basket and gave it as a gift to the Prophet. His head was brought back in a basket and gave to the Prophet as a gift by Muhammad ibn Maslama. Al-Khattaab participated in the Battle of Uhud, 3 AH. Also in the Battle of Uhud 1 year later, 3 AH. Now, something happened at the Battle of Uhud. The Prophet put 50 archers on top of a hill and told them to guard the hill. Am I can hear me? And they did not obey the Prophet. They dashed down from the hill. Could you write what he participated in the Battle of Uhud 3 AH? Yes. And the Muslims, because of their disobedience to the Prophet, what was supposed to be a sure victory for them turned into a defeat. And the Rasul ﷺ took refuge on top of a hill. And they thought, the kuffar, they thought the Prophet was dead. So Abu Sufyan, who led the battle, he cried out, "Where is Muhammad? Where is Muhammad? Where is Abu Bakr? Where is Abu Bakr?" He started screaming on top of his own. "Where is Umar? Where is Umar? All of you are dead. You are dead." Who said that? Abu Sufyan. So Umar could not contain himself. He said, "Shut up, you liar. All three who you have called, they are alive." Umar said, "Shut up, you liar. The three names that you have called out, they are alive." Because he's spreading rumor. They are dead. They are dead. Muhammad is dead. Abu Bakr is dead. Umar is dead. Now, even though he was a kafir, he knew who were the stalwarts of Islam. Look what he said. "Where is Muhammad? Where is Abu Bakr? Where is Umar?" Abu Sufyan said that. And he wasn't a Muslim at the time. Yet he knew who were the important figures of Islam. That's how he arranged them. Then he said, "Glory be to Hubal. Raise up Hubal." So Umar, Abu Bakr, Muhammad, Abu Bakr, and Umar, he said, they were dead. Now, he said, "Raise up Hubal." The Prophet said, "Why don't you answer him? Why don't you answer him?" They said, "O Messenger of Allah, how can you answer him?" Say to him, "Allah is the highest." Say to him, "Allah is the highest." Then he said, "We have Lat, we have Uzza, we have Hubal." The Prophet said, "Why don't you answer him?" They said, "O Messenger of Allah, what should we say?" Say to him, "Allah is our Mawla, and you have no Mawla. Allah is our protector, our Mawla, but you have no Mawla." Then he said, "A day for a day. You kill 70 of us at Badr, but today we kill 70 of you. A day for a day. Our dead for your dead." The Prophet said, "Why don't you answer him? Why don't you answer him?" They said, "O Messenger of Allah, what should we say to him?" Say to him, Our dead are in paradise, but your dead are in the hellfire." And when the Prophet gave them that answer, Umar was the one who was shouting out the answers to Abu Sufyan. Let's continue our dars. I've brought you a hadith about Umar shouting out the answers to Abu Sufyan after the Battle of Uhud. And the reason why the Prophet gave the answers to Umar to shout out to Abu Sufyan is because whenever the Kafirs say something to you, you should always have an answer. Because if you don't, they think that they score a psychological advantage over you. The Prophet didn't want Abu Sufyan to go back to Mecca, thinking that he scored a psychological advantage over the Muslims. So every time he said something, the Prophet would say, "Why don't you answer him? Why don't you answer him?" And when they didn't have the answer, the Prophet would provide the answer to every single statement of Abu Sufyan. Al-Khattab also participated in the Battle of the Ditch 5 AH. In the Battle of the Ditch 5 AH. Participated in the Battle of Khaybar 6 AH. He participated in the conquest of Mecca as well. 8 AH. Khaybar. He participated in the Battle of Khaybar, KH. That's when they routed the Jews. He participated as he was at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Umar ibn al-Khattab was at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Before you write about Khaybar, write about Hudaybiyah because that came before Khaybar. At the Treaty of Hudaybiyah 6 AH. He was at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah 6 AH. Now, when the Prophet was negotiating with Quraysh at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, Umar was fuming and he was angry because he didn't agree with the clause of the treaty. The Kafir says, scratch out Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We don't know about that. And write Bismillah alone. Secondly, the Prophet wrote Rasulullah, Muhammad Rasulullah. They say, scratch out Rasulullah because we don't accept you as the messenger of Allah, so scratch that out. Had we accepted you as Rasulullah, we wouldn't have fought you at the Battle of Badr and the Battle of Uhud. Then one of the clauses in the treaty is, anyone who leaves Dar al-Harb, Makkah, to go and live in Medina, which is Dar al-Islam, the Muslims should send him back. But anyone who leaves Dar al-Islam, Medina, to go and live in Dar al-Harb, Makkah, the kuffar will be allowed to keep him. This was the clause in the treaty that caused Umar to be fuming. So what kind of a treaty is that? Was fuming when that clause was mentioned. He was saying, what kind of a treaty is that? Treaty gives power to the kuffar. Umar's argument is this treaty is not in favor of the Muslims. So the Prophet prescribed Rasulullah. Anyone who leaves Darul Islam to live in Mecca will be allowed to stay. Listen to the clause that made Umar became very, very angry. Anyone who leaves Mecca to go and live in Medina, the Muslims have to send him back. Listen to what I'm saying. Anyone who leaves Mecca, Dar al-Harb, to go and live in Medina, the Muslims were obliged to send him back. But anyone who leaves Medina to go and live in Mecca, the kuffar will be allowed to keep him. The clause in the treaty that caused Umar to be fuming. Anyone who leaves Medina, Dar al-Islam, to go and live in Mecca, Dar al-Harb, the kuffar are allowed to keep him. Went to Abu Bakr and started to complain about the clause in the treaty. Abu Bakr said, keep quiet because I testify that he is the messenger of Allah. But anyone who leaves Medina to go to Mecca, we would be allowed to keep him. Yes, that is the clause that caused Umar to be fuming. So he went to Abu Bakr and said, what kind of a treaty is that? Abu Bakr said, keep quiet because I testify that he is the messenger of Allah. Umar said, what are you trying to say? I don't testify that he is the messenger of Allah? I also testify that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, but I don't understand the treaty. Now, don't forget, when the Prophet put pen to paper and signed the treaty, Allah revealed Surah 48, Inna fatahna laka fathan mubin. Verily, we have given you a clear victory. So why did Allah Ta'ala call it a victory? What is the victory? Surah 48. What is the victory Allah is talking about? The victory is the treaty itself. That is the victory. The fact, when Allah said, when Muhammad put pen to paper and signed the treaty, Allah revealed, Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. What is the victory? The victory is the treaty itself. One of the clauses of the treaty is 10 years no war. 10 years no war between Mecca and Medina. Why the treaty was a victory? Do you know why? Do you want to hear the secret why? Because it is insanity to open too many war fronts. You shouldn't spread yourself thin. It is insanity to open too many war fronts. Hitler did not know that. Hitler, many people claim, oh, Hitler was a Muslim. If Hitler was a Muslim, why didn't he study the history of Muhammad, the seerah of the Prophet, and know that it is insanity to open many war fronts? Hitler invaded 23 countries. How can Germany subdue 23 countries? It's insanity to open many war fronts. So by putting one enemy behind you to focus on other enemies, you give yourself the time and the resources to subdue the Jews of Khaybar, to focus on other enemies. This is why the Prophet was told by Allah, when you put pen to paper and sign the treaty, that in itself is a great victory. Fathan Mubinan, a clear victory, a manifest victory. Because it is insanity to open too many war fronts. Or didn't understand the treaty. If the kuffar says, scratch out your title, we don't accept you as Rasulullah, it makes no difference, because Allah said we are going to give you victory. We sent you Muhammad as our messenger, and we are going to give you victory. Allah Ta'ala said, هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى وبالحق ليظهره على دين كله ولو كره المشركون. He is that sent his messenger with the religion of truth to be victorious over all other religions, even though the mushrikun, the pagans, they hate it. When Prophet agree, anybody who leaves Medina to go and live in Mecca, we the Kafirs will be allowed to keep it. Why the Prophet agree? Don't you know why the Prophet agreed to that? If you are living in the Islamic state of Medina with the Prophet, you enjoy the company of the Prophet, and you want to leave to go and live in Mecca among pagans who worship 360 idols, you are a munafiq. We don't need you. You are human garbage. Happy riddance. That's why the Prophet didn't hesitate to sign it. Happy riddance. If you want to leave the Islamic state of Medina to go and live among the kuffar in Mecca, after you have tasted the sweetness of Iman, happy riddance, we don't need you. You are a human garbage. A munafiq, a hypocrite. This is why the Prophet didn't hesitate to sign the treaty. Umar couldn't understand it. Umar said, I felt so ashamed about myself opposing the Prophet at the treaty of Hudaybiyah. I continued to give sadaqah, charity, for the rest of my life, hoping that Allah would forgive me. Ashamed and embarrassed about opposing the Prophet at the treaty of Hudaybiyah, I continued to give sadaqah, charity, hoping that Allah would forgive me. Can you find the hadith I was quoted? I learned it from my sheikhs. You think you can find it? The The 8 years I was in Saudi Arabia, I've learned thousands of hadith, and I even remember which Shaykh taught me which hadith. Even though I had 150 Shaykhs, I can remember which Shaykh taught me which hadith. Because each hadith is either aqidah, or hadith, or fiqh, or tafsir, or seerah, the life of the Rasul. So I know which Shaykh taught me which hadith. Umar also participated in the Battle of Khaybar. It was 6 AH. He participated in the conquest of Mecca, which was 8 AH. Participated in the conquest of Mecca. No, Khaybar was 6 AH. Khaybar was 6 AH. The conquest of Mecca was 8 AH. Was 6 AH, and the conquest of Mecca was 8 AH. So Mecca was 8 AH. He participated in many more battles, which I do not want to go into right now because I have to finish my notes. But he participated in many more battles. Upon the death of the Prophet ﷺ, some people could not cope with the news the Prophet died. Umar was one of them who couldn't cope with the news that the Prophet died. Al-Khattaab was very wise, and on many occasions Allah agreed with Umar with his verdicts. Umar was very wise, and on many occasions Allah agreed with the verdict of Umar. I have in front of me at least 4 examples of how Allah agreed with Umar. And sometimes Umar was right and the Prophet was wrong. Because of his wisdom, the Prophet said, if there should be a Prophet after me, it would have been Umar. So Muhammad said, if there should be a Prophet after me, it would be Umar, because of his wisdom. Could you find the hadith I've just quoted? Because of the wisdom of Umar, the Prophet Muhammad said, if there should be a Prophet after me, it would be Umar. Where is the hadith? Of me, at least 4 examples of how Allah agreed with Umar. Is the hadith quoted? Where is the hadith? Is it quoted? I cannot see it. Is it on the board? If there should be a Prophet after me, it will be Umar. I cannot see it on my screen. If there were to be a Prophet after me, then it would be Umar. Okay, yes. Now I can see the hadith. As I'm saying, I have in front of me 4 examples of how Allah agreed with Umar. The first example is when Umar said, let us take Maqam Ibraaheem as a station for Salah. Okay, authentic with 19, you're going to write 4 occasions when Allah agreed with Umar. There is a hadith that says, 4 examples how Allah agreed with Umar. Okay, the first example, it was Umar's opinion and his suggestion to take Maqam Ibraaheem as a station for Salah. Reveal Baqarah 125. And take the station of Abraham as a Salah. Don't bring all the ayah, it's a long ayah. Just take the part that I am quoting, where Allah said, and take Maqam Ibraaheem as a station for Salah. That's one example. Umar Allah agreed with Umar. This is the example. Example number 1, Umar suggested to take Maqam Ibraaheem as a musalla. Ibraaheem. Maqam Ibraaheem means the station of Abraham. When you go to Mecca to perform Hajj or Umrah, you pray behind Maqam Ibraaheem. There is Baqarah 125 where Allah said, and take Maqam Ibraaheem as a place for Salah. Could you bring the ayah, please? It's a long ayah. Just bring a piece that I've quoted. To Maqam Ibraaheem Musalla. This is the part of the ayah I want. It was Umar's opinion, and Allah agreed with Umar. And the second opinion of Umar that Allah agreed with for Muslim women to wear hijab. Surah 33, verse 59. Surah 33, verse 59. Allah reveals Surah 33, verse 59 to agree with Umar. 3, verse 59. The third example of how Allah agreed with Umar is to kill the captives at Badr. The Prophet had 70 captives, and Umar said, chop off their heads one by one. And the Prophet didn't agree with Umar. The Prophet agreed with Abu Bakr. But the opinion of Umar was the correct opinion, because many of these captives, they returned the next year to fight at Uhud to take revenge. So Allah reveals Surah 8, verse 67, to prove that Umar had the correct opinion. The opinion of Umar was the correct opinion, not the opinion of Abu Bakr. The fourth example of how Allah agreed with Umar when he told the Prophet not to pray over the hypocrite Abdallah ibn Ubay. Told the Prophet, don't pray over Abdullah ibn Ubay because he's a munafiq. Ibn Ubay was the leader of hypocrites of Medina. He was the one who started the rumor that Aisha had an affair. He started the rumor. Aisha had an affair. The Prophet not to pray over Abdullah ibn Ubay. Okay, bring the ayah, Surah 9, verse 84. Could you spell it the way I spell it? Ubay. Abdullah ibn Ubay. He was the leader of the hypocrites of Medina. Could you please spell it the way I spell it? When the Prophet prayed over him, it was a huge mistake because he was a munafiq. The janazah of a munafiq. Haram, haram, haram. If you know that a person is a munafiq, when he dies, you should not go to his janazah. And never pray for any of them who died. Now stand at their grave, certainly. They disbelieve in Allah and His Messenger and died while they are fasiqun, rebellious. So these are the examples of how Allah revealed the Quran taking sides with Umar, because he was very wise. And the Prophet said, if there should be a prophet after me, it would have been Umar. Was known, he was famous for his al-Wala wal-Bara. Umar was famous for his al-Wala wal-Bara. Al-Wala wal-Bara means love and hate for Allah. And because of that, he chopped off the head of his uncle at the Battle of Badr. Because of his al-Wala wal-Bara, he chopped off the head of his uncle, his Kafir uncle, at the Battle of Badr. He was harsh against the Munafiqeen. He was also harsh against the Munafiqeen. So because of that, when the man came to the Prophet and asked the Prophet for a verdict, the Prophet gave the verdict. Then the man went to Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr said, did you ask the Prophet? The man said, yes, but I want your opinion. Abu Bakr shunned the man. The man went to Umar. Umar said, did you ask the Prophet? The man said, yes, but still I want to hear your opinion. Umar said, wait, I'll bring my opinion. And Umar took out his sword and chopped off the head of the man. I said, that's my opinion. When he was killed, nobody said Umar was overreacting. So Umar was famous for being harsh against the Munafiqeen. Do you think you can find a hadith I was quoted about Umar decapitating the head of a man? Because he did not surrender to the hukum of the Prophet. You think you can find that hadith? So when Umar chopped off the head of the man, Allah revealed Surah Nisa, verse 65. فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِيمَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Named by your Lord, they'll never become true believers until they allow you, Muhammad, to judge between them in their disputes. And when you deal with the verdict, they have no resentment in their hearts towards your verdict, but instead they surrender, they submit wholeheartedly. Allah revealed, when Umar chopped off the head of a man, Allah revealed Surah Nisa, verse 65. Okay, see why he killed the man? Because the man tried the opinion of the Sahabas to view to the Prophet. Umar was so harsh that even the shaitan was afraid of Umar. The Prophet said, whenever the shaitan sees you walking down the road, Umar, he would take the other side of the road. Okay, fine. That's it. Whenever the shaitan sees Umar walking down the road, walk on the other side of the road. Okay, you have found the hadith where Umar decapitated the head of a munafiq. He was harsh against the munafiqeen. Even the shaitan was afraid of Umar. Okay, find the hadith. The Prophet said, oh Umar, whenever the shaitan sees you walking down the road, he would walk on the other side of the road. When Umar was in Medina, there was a shaitan finally going away, but he takes the other way. Okay. This is a very, very long hadith, so I'm happy you only quoted the piece that I am talking about, because it's a very long hadith. You only bring the piece of the hadith that I quoted. This hadith is talking about Muslim women were sitting with the Prophet, and when they heard the voice of Umar, they got up and ran behind curtains. And Umar said, you enemies, you men are enemies of yourselves. How could you be with the Prophet talking, and when you heard my voice, you ran away? And the Prophet was laughing at the woman. The Prophet was laughing at the woman. It's a very, very long hadith. So I'm glad you only quote the piece that I recited unto you. The Prophet ﷺ groomed Umar and to be one of the best Sahabas. Second to none but Abu Bakr. His love for the Prophet was profound. So when the Prophet died, Umar couldn't cope. Umar said, if anybody said Muhammad is dead, I'm going to chop off his head. They said Muhammad is dead. If I hear anybody saying Muhammad is dead, I'm going to chop off his head. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq went into the house and kissed the Prophet, and he came out and said, people, oh people, anybody who worship Muhammad, Muhammad is dead. And anybody who worship Allah, Allah is alive and cannot die. And then Abu Bakr recited Surah 3, 144. Muhammad is only a man like you. Many messengers have passed away. If you should die or been killed, will you apostate from your deen? Will you turn back on your heels? Surah 3, 144. That was the ayah Abu Bakr as-Siddiq read to make Umar calm down. When the Prophet died, incumbent on the Muslims to choose a caliph. The Ansars, they wanted to practice politics of separatism. The Ansar said, we will have a caliph from al-Muhajirun and a caliph from the Ansar. And they gathered in a house called Saqifa ibn Sa'd. Was gathered in Saqifa ibn Sa'd to carve up the caliphate, to usurp the caliphate. So Abu Bakr doing, and that would have been disaster. So 3 of them rushed to Saqifa ibn Sa'd. Saqifa means a shed. The word Saqifa means a shed. The 3 that rushed to the Saqifa, Abu Bakr, Umar, and Abu Abdillah ibn al-Jarrah. So, if the caliphate could come from the Ansars, it would have been a disaster. Because the Ansars, they have tribalism between themselves. Between the Aus and the Khazraj. These 2 tribes used to kill each other a lot in Jahiliyyah. So if the caliphate should come from one of them, the Muslim empire would not be united. How can they have a caliph from them? These 2 tribes are always at loggerheads. The Prophet was so wise. What the Prophet said? The caliphate is from Quraysh. Hasan in Quraysh. The Prophet said 4 things from Jahiliyyah my ummah will never relinquish. One of them is what? Tribalism. To look down on the other tribes and to brag about your tribes. Quraysh everybody can unite behind Quraysh because it is the most noble tribe among the others. But if the caliphate should come from a tribe which is inferior to Quraysh, who is going to give their bay'ah to that caliph? It's because of this reason the Prophet said, let the caliph be from Quraysh. Al-Khilafah min Quraysh. Why the Prophet said that? Because the Prophet didn't want disaster to spread in the Ummah. Because the Ummah will never give up tribalism. Okay, find the hadith. There are 4 things from Jahiliyyah my Ummah will never give up. And find the hadith where the Prophet said from Quraysh. Authentic 19, we are going to say the Prophet ordered that the caliphate should be from Quraysh because the Ummah will never abandon tribalism. And Quraysh was the most noble tribe. People will only give their bay'ah to a caliph if he is of Quraysh. The people will only give their bay'ah to a caliph who is from Quraysh, not an inferior tribe. Thank you for finding the hadith. Narrated. Ibn Umar. This matter will remain with the Quraysh even if 2 of them were existing. Okay, shukr. Now, Umar reminded the people of Medina that the Prophet said the caliphate should be from Quraysh. And Umar gave his bay'ah to Abu Bakr. And when Umar gave his bay'ah to Abu Bakr, all the other Muslims, they followed suit. So Umar is remembered for uniting the Ummah under the leadership of Abu Bakr. It was Umar who united the Ummah under the caliphate of Abu Bakr. And he will forever be remembered for the service he has done for Islam and Muslims. Who united the Ummah under the Khilafah of Abu Bakr. He united the Muslims. When Abu Bakr Siddiq was on his deathbed, he called Uthman to write his will. When Abu Bakr Siddiq was on his deathbed, he called Uthman and he dictated his will to Uthman, to write his will. Abu Bakr said in the will, I want Ali to wash my body, because it was Ali who washed the Prophet. Well, he said he wanted Umar to be his successor. Put in the will, he wants Ali to wash his body, and he wants Umar to be his successor. Who was saying to Abu Bakr, how can you choose such a harsh man to be your successor? Abu Bakr said, don't worry, when he becomes caliph, he will have mercy in his heart for the Ummah. Don't worry, when Umar becomes the caliph, he will have mercy in his heart for the Ummah. Umar became the caliph. He surrounded himself with Sahabas who were scholars. He didn't allow the senior Sahabas to leave Medina. He surrounded himself with scholars of the Sahabas to advise him in case he forgets something while he's implementing the Sharia. Himself with senior Sahabas, and he did not allow them to leave Medina, the seat of government, because he needed their advice for them to remind him in case he forgot something while he's implementing the Sharia. When he was a caliph, he appointed a woman to be the Minister of Finance. Do you know her name? That's her name, Shifa bint Abdallah. He appointed a woman to be in charge of finances when he was a caliph. There is a hadith that says, okay, her name is Shifa bint Abdullah. There's a hadith that says Umar buried one of his girl children alive when he was a kafir in Jahiliyyah. That hadith is fabricated. The famous hadith that people quote, Umar buried one of his girl children alive, that's a fabricated hadith. Law and a voice. I'm saying there's a hadith that says Umar buried one of his girl children alive. The Muslims like to quote it, but my Shaykh told me it's a fabricated hadith. I'm also saying that some people quote a hadith, Umar, one of his sons committed zina and he killed him. He beat him and killed him because of zina. That's a fabricated hadith. You know why? That same son, when the war broke out between Ali and Muawiyah, he was in the camp of Ali, fighting against Muawiyah. So how can he be killed? Did he come out of his grave to join the army of Ali? That's another fabricated hadith. People of listening to hadith from people who are jahil, and you repeat the hadith thinking it's Saheeh, and it's a fabricated hadith. Umar became the caliph. He conquered many territories for Islam. Abu Bakr predicted that when Umar becomes the caliph, he's going to have mercy in his heart for the Ummah. Because some Sahaba said to Abu Bakr, how can you appoint such a harsh man to be our caliph? Abu Bakr said, don't worry, he'll have mercy in his heart when he becomes the caliph. As Abu Bakr predicted, it came to pass. Because when Umar was the caliph, the Muslims had a famine for 3 years. And Umar suspended the law of cutting off the hand of the thief because of the famine. Umar suspended the law of cutting off the hand of the thief because of the drought, the famine. So Abu Bakr was right. When he becomes a caliph, he'll have mercy in his heart for the Muslims. Of a drought. Okay, give the reason why. Because of a drought. So Abu Bakr was right. When he becomes caliph, he'll have mercy in his heart for the Muslims. Did not go to his bed until he's sure all the Muslims have dinner. All the Muslims had dinner to eat before they go to bed. He used to go from house to house to make sure that every Muslim has food to eat before going to his bed. He did not go to his bed until all the Muslims had enough to eat. As he went out, he found a woman. She was boiling something in the pot. She asked, what are you boiling? She said, stones. I'm so poor, I have no food in the pot. All I have is stones. So I put the pot on the fire for the kids to fall asleep. Umar was shocked to see the poverty. He went back to the Bayt al-Mal and got flour and barley, things for the woman to cook. His traveling companion said, oh Umar, you are the Caliph Amir al-Mu'mineen. How can you carry the bag for the woman with the food inside of it? Let me carry the bag for you. Umar refused. Umar said, will you carry my sins for me on the day of judgment when I stand in front of Allah? And he carried the food, and he was the one who cooked the food for the woman. His traveling companion said, I could see the smoke in the beard of Umar as he bent down to blow the fire underneath the pot of the woman. The woman said, you deserve to be the caliph, not Umar. She did not know she was speaking to Umar. So when she said, you should be the caliph, not Umar. And she was speaking to Umar. So Umar said, come to my office tomorrow. When she went to the office, she realized it was Umar who helped her the night before. She can't believe the caliph, the leader of a huge empire. The empire consisted of Mecca, Medina, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Yemen, Azerbaijan, Armenia, such a huge empire. And the caliph was so humble. He carried food for her, and he was the one who cooked the food for her. She can't understand, how can the caliph be so humble? So when Abu Bakr said, don't worry that I appointed Umar to be your caliph, when he becomes the caliph, he will have mercy in his heart for the Muslims, Abu Bakr was right about that. The hadith I have just quoted, do you think you can find it when Umar brought the food for the woman? You think you can find that hadith? His traveling companion said, you are the caliph, let me carry the load for you. Umar refused and said, will you carry my load for me, my sins for me, when I stand in front of Allah on the day of judgment? Find the hadith now, you can insert it later. When Umar was the caliph, news spread a woman was having an affair, and the woman was pregnant. And petrified and terrified, Umar, he panicked when she miscarried the baby. Am I can hear me? He panicked because the woman miscarried her baby. He gathered the scholars of Medina, people like Abdurrahman bin Auf and Uthman and Ali ibn Abi Talib and Sa'd ibn Abu Waqqas, Abdallah ibn Mas'ud, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Jabir ibn Abdullah. He held a shura meeting and said, should I compensate her? They said, no compensation. You are the caliph. If you hear news, you can verify the news. And Ali was in the meeting, but he kept quiet. So Omar said, what is your opinion, Ali? He didn't say Ali, he said Abul Hassan. He said, I don't agree with these lot. It is your fault. The woman miscarried her baby. You frightened the woman. Therefore, you have to compensate the woman, and you have to give her 5 camels because you caused her to miscarry her baby, because you frightened her. And Omar accepted the opinion of Ali and gave the woman 5 camels. And Omar used to say, if it wasn't for Ali, I would have been destroyed. If it wasn't for Ali, I would have been destroyed. Her compensation was 5 camels. Because Ali gave that opinion. It was Omar's fault. He caused her to miscarry her baby because he frightened the woman. So if you cause a Muslim woman to miscarry her baby, the compensation is 5 camels. Now, why did I quote unto you this incident? To prove to you that when Abu Bakr said, when Omar became the caliph, he would have mercy in his heart for the Muslims. Abu Bakr was right. The caliphate expanded during the reign of Umar. He conquered Iraq, Iran, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Egypt, Libya, Azerbaijan, and even Armenia, as well as Jerusalem. Umar was a caliph, he ruled with justice. And whenever the people complained about their governor being oppressive, he would investigate the matter first. And if the governor was proven to be oppressive, he would fire the governor. The caliphate expanded during the caliphate of Umar. He conquered Iraq, Iran, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Jerusalem, Libya, Egypt, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. Umar conquered Jerusalem. He lifted a Christian ban on Jews and allowed Jews to return to Jerusalem to live. When Umar conquered Jerusalem, he lifted a Christian ban on Jews and allowed Jews to return to Jerusalem to live. Third, Umar conquered Iran, Iraq, Egypt, Armenia, Syria, Jordan, Palestine, Jerusalem, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. He lifted a Christian ban on Jerusalem and allowed Jews to return to Jerusalem to live. Jews to return to Jerusalem to live. In 644 CE, Omar was assassinated by a man from Persia called Abdallah. A Persian assassinated Umar 644 CE because of an argument over pay. He said he's not getting enough pay. His master was called Mishrah ibn Haa. He complained to Umar that he's not getting enough pay from his master. And Umar said, how much he pays you? And he told Umar, and he said, that pay is fair. Umar said, it's fair. So when Umar said that amount of money that he pays you is fair, he did not like what Umar said, so he said he's going to kill Umar. Master who owned the slave or this man is called Mishrah ibn Haa. That's the name of the master of Abu Lu'lu'. He was the employee of Abu Lu'lu', the employer. Abu Lu'lu' is the employee and he was the employer. They had an argument over pay, and he took a matter to Umar, and Umar asked, how much do you get? And when he told Umar, Umar said, that amount is fair. That's the amount of pay people get who are in your profession. And he carried a grudge against Umar, and he killed Umar. He went into the masjid for Fajr, and he stabbed Umar, and Umar died as a result. He stabbed 13 Muslims because he was a fire worshipper. It is important for you to make takfir. Had they made takfir on him, he wouldn't have gained access to Medina, because kafirs are not allowed to enter Mecca nor Medina. So takfir is important. When we did the history of Umar, I asked one of my sheikhs, why the Muslims allow a fire worshipper to enter Medina? You know what they said to me? He was pretending to be a Muslim. Umar, when he came out to lead Salah, and he stabbed 13 Muslims that morning, 7 died. 13 Muslims, because he was a fire worshipper from Iran and he hated Muslims. Abu Lu'lu' was a fire worshipper. The Shiites, they hold him in high esteem, and they make pilgrimage to his grave till today. Even though Abu Lu'lu' was a fire worshipper, the Shiites, they hold him in high esteem, and they make pilgrimage to his grave till today. Even though Abu Lu'lu' was a fire worshipper, the Shiites, they hold him in high esteem. They built a shrine over his grave, and they make pilgrimage to his grave till today. After the legacy of Umar. Chapter, before we close, the legacy of Umar. He was a political genius who united the Ummah under the caliphate of Abu Bakr. He is remembered as a political genius who united the Ummah under the caliphate of Abu Bakr. He united the Islamic Empire under the leadership of Abu Bakr. He was a military genius who expanded the caliphate beyond the imagination of the Muslims. He was a military genius. Genius who expanded the Islamic empire beyond the imagination of the Muslims. The genius who expanded the Islamic empire beyond the imagination of the Muslims. He was a skillful statesman. He was a skillful statesman and politician who looked after his subjects, who cared about the welfare of his subjects, a skillful statesman and politician, who cared about his subjects. A leader who ruled with justice, and no one was above the law in his reign. Number, he was a ruler who ruled with justice. He was a leader who ruled with justice, and no one was above the law during his reign. For this reason, he was given the title Umar al-Faruq. He helped to develop the Islamic Sharia. For example, Tarawih prayers in Jama'ah came from Umar. An intelligent jurist who helped to develop the Islamic Sharia. Umar was an intelligent jurist who helped to develop the Islamic Sharia. For example, Salat al-Tarawih in Jama'ah came from Umar. He was an intelligent Islamic jurist who helped to develop the Islamic Sharia. For example, Salat al-Tarawih is one of the legacy of Umar. For example, Salat al-Tarawih in Jama'ah is one of the legacies of Umar. For example, Salat al-Tarawih in Jama'ah is one of the examples, one of the legacies of Umar. Let's stop here for today. I'd like to thank Alternative 19 for the notes. I'd like to thank our brother for posting the Hujjah. Alternative 3, I'd like to thank Alternative 3 for posting the Hujjah. I'd like to thank our brother Accept the Truth for helping to post the Hujjah. If there's any Hujjah you're going to find, you can post it later. For example, when the woman miscarried her baby when Umar called her. That hadith is in a rare book. I learned it from the lips of my sheikhs. I don't expect you to find it easily, but you can go and search for it. It's in a rare book like at-Tabarani or ad-Dhahabi, not in a popular book like Bukhari or Muslim. I learned it from the lips of my sheikhs. The story of Umar causing the woman to miscarry her baby, and he gave her 5 camels as compensation. Go and search for that hadith. It's not weak, it's a strong hadith, and I learned it from my sheikhs. I'll do Uthman tomorrow, inshallah. Subhanaka wa bihamdik, la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. I'll know you as a man.